hasn't it? Are we live now?
Yes.
Alright, welcome everyone. Uh, we were having a week here. It's week 8. Welcome to 2K Weekly. I'm TaipeiJoey101, joined by Danny V and DaPigbear. This thumbnail here was originally created because Danny originally said he wasn't going to be here for this stream because we had to reschedule it. I want to give a quick shout out to my Sinus Infection. I left a link to them in the description. I can't hear out of my left ear. I repeat, my left ear has gone completely numb. Like if you get the reference, we're also joined by our good friend DaPigbear here once again to take a look at week 8, and it's just been a hectic week, including the fact that we did this whole intro, but we weren't live. So we're gonna run through this again. All right, you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hey Bear.
Well, hello, good to finally be talking to you. I'm coming to you with a hand that has gotten skin torn on it and a bone bruise right arm and a bone bruise knee right now. Coming to you live from Milton and Tones, but yeah, this is all going swimmingly.
And Danny?
Hi, your usual host here. Had myself a little incident where I thought I wouldn't be here, but due to some circumstances, I was finally able to make it here right on time.
Yeah, I've had a hectic time. As I mentioned, sinus infection, ear not good. If you remember, I was feeling really lightheaded on the stream on Saturday, the doubleheader, which might have also contributed to the fact that I didn't plug in my laptop during the stream. And so the last half of the Oregon-Stanford game is now lost to time, even though I did manage to recover some replays. And it's unfortunate because what a game that ended up being. That's our first top story here. Stanford coming back from down 3 scores to beat the Oregon Ducks at home, 35-34. What a homecoming game for the Cardinal. Illinois, that game we did capture, completely shutting out the Michigan offense. Everything they had going, the Illini were there to answer it. 27-20 the final score. Michigan didn't score until the final 30 seconds, or they didn't get to the end zone until the final 30 seconds in this game. William and Mary, out of the SoCon, they now control their own destiny in the SoCon after beating perennial SoCon East dominant dynasty App State on their homecoming, 30-21. The score as that's a big win for the Tribe. Notre Dame and Indiana clashing, two of the best teams in the Big Ten. It's the Irish who take the win on their homecoming, 30-10 the final there. And Wisconsin getting a big upset win over the 24th Ohio State Buckeyes, 45-35. That's their first conference win this year. Auburn, though, I at least had some big hopes for them. They lost to a 2-5 Ole Miss team, 47-17. A complete collapse for the Tigers. Meanwhile, the SEC West might have been decided in Tuscaloosa as the number 4 ranked Tigers beat up on the Alabama Crimson Tide, 58-21. This is a Bama team that was in desperation mode after their loss to Tennessee, and they might have been eliminated from the race unless something crazy happens above them. In the ACC, a potential preview for the conference title game, Virginia Tech beating Florida State in Tallahassee 33-7, a complete steamrolling, and now Florida State slips in the conference standings, and North Carolina looks to be the second best team in the conference right now. And we'll wrap up with Northern Illinois beating the current record for the longest regular season win streak, winning 34 games in a row, beating Oregon's 33 that they set between 2010 and 2012. The Huskies had this record going from 2020 to now. This is a huge game that they played over Ball State. The energy was just electric when those final seconds ticked down. What's the biggest story for you guys here, Danny?
My big score here is Northern Illinois getting 33 regular season wins wins back to back. That's impressive.
And PigBear?
I'm just gonna get out. That's I thought my ACC championship prediction was gonna be Florida State versus North Carolina, but it just seems like the Hokies came through and they'll likely be on Charlotte.
I definitely want to point attention to William and Mary. What a big win for them. A team that I thought wasn't even going to make a bowl game at the start of the year are now in control of their own destiny on the road to Nashville, which is crazy to me. No slides this week. I've actually been thinking about toning those back. We'll see a different take on them next week, as Danny has some interesting things concocted. But before we get to talking about the games this week, I want to take a moment to mention the 2KU now on Tumblr once again. Head over to tumblr.com/2KUniverse for more updates and bonus content. The MLB playoffs are still going. We're gonna get some more scores for that soon. Don't forget to stay tuned there. We gave some updates through the stream on Saturday, if you remember. But so if you want to keep your ear to the ground on that, give that blog a follow. But now let's head over and talk about the games this week. We'll be going throughout the week. We have two games I want to highlight here. A close game between Buffalo and Western Michigan, 37-34 the final there. And a huge upset, Kent State at homecoming beating the Miami, Ohio Redhawks 43-42 to rack up a conference win. That's a big game. Danny, any thoughts there?
They were projected to be a dominant team, and they were looking like they were going to go undefeated, but then Kent State, they decided to pull off a little bit of some trickery.
Anything that catches your eye, PigBear?
Again, just want to thank the Kent State.
We'll head over to Thursday. The big game here, North Texas scooting away against an Arkansas State team. Keeping it close, though, North Texas may or may not have clinched their spot in the Sun Belt Championship. Danny?
Yeah, for me, North Texas is definitely the team to look at for the Sun Belt. But another surprise team here was the young South State. Let's see how far they can go. They can maybe be a potential contender in the MAC West.
I mean, they lost that game, but all right. We'll move on to Friday. Tulsa laying it down on CSU Fullerton. A big win for Louisiana, 50-19 over Colgate. And Georgia Southern continuing their reign of dominance. They're probably your favorites as SoCon champions. Danny, your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, one game to look out for is the Brown-Cornell game. That game was making me decide to hybrid. Let's see how these teams perform further on.
PigBear?
Again, Brown-Cornell, that could help decide. I think they win on Colgate.
All right, we're going to move on to our Saturday games. Going to go one row at a time here. We have the games highlighted that we think are the most impactful. Let's start with the game we mentioned earlier. Northern Illinois, 52-21. They beat Ball State to clinch the regular season winning streak record at 34 games. Moving a bit up, we have Miami of Florida taking down Wake Forest 21-18 in overtime. USF pulls off an upset against the Louisville Cardinals 34-37 in overtime. We had a lot of overtime games to start ourselves off. We mentioned Michigan, Illinois, 27-20 the final there. Huge win for the Illini in the race to Indy in the Big Ten. We'll head down to our final game. I want to highlight Georgia Tech 42-21 on the road over Kentucky. Syracuse also a ranked team who got a win over Georgetown 36-6. And FAU having a close call against Old Dominion in overtime, 32-29 the score. Danny, what jumps out at you in these scores?
For me, scores might be Rice being a dominant win over East Carolina. Rice wasn't really expected to win a lot, but they're really improving on, and the CUSA East is looking kind of weaker in UCF's division.
Pig Bear? Big win. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting that their 14-0 Peach Bowl season may end up being a footnote in what I could consider a future college football power. Let's head over to our next row here. Temple, 23-6 on the road over St. John's. This team's looking a lot better than they started out. They might be a sneaky contender in the Big East, which we'll get to. Troy on the road, beating a heavily favored Western Kentucky team in overtime, 45-38 the score there. Colorado laying the hammer down against Texas, 57-28 the final there. North Carolina, 55-28. They take down the Clemson Tigers as they get another step in their pursuit of Charlotte. How about SMU and Southern Miss? The Eagles, the Golden Eagles, having a bit of a close call, 41-31 the final. Not as distant as a lot of the Golden Eagles' other games have been. Watch out, Southern Miss. We might see some cracks in the facade, especially with Memphis still on the schedule. Let's head over to Oklahoma State, proving that they're the number one team in the country. 34-24 win over the Cyclones. Don't let the close score fool you. This game was not close at all. We mentioned William & Mary, 30-21 win over App State. They got to spoil the party in Boone. And now they are looking to be playing in Nashville in the conference title game. Let's head down to Kansas, beating Oklahoma 34-19. This is a different breed of Kansas, one that's been bubbling under the top 25 for a while. But I think that in the right circumstances, they'll pop in at any moment. UMass getting a win on the road against Charlotte. They are looking even better than we thought at the beginning of the year. TCU 44-12 over Colorado State. Dominant win for the Horned Frogs. And we'll wrap up this column with Tennessee, the number 25 team in the country. On the road, a bit of a scare, but they managed to beat the Bulldogs 30-24. What are some big games in this column for you, Danny?
For me, a big game that doesn't get a lot of attention, but I really enjoyed Texas against Colorado. Both these teams are like sneaky contenders in their divisions, so to have Colorado come out like this big win, they definitely make themselves look better and better each week.
And Pig Bear? Uh-huh.
It's crazy to see William & Mary control their destiny.
It's definitely an unbelievable turn of events here in the SoCon. Let's head over to column number 3. LSU 58-21 on the road against a very difficult Alabama team. Meanwhile, Wichita State, they are now in control of their own destiny in the Missouri Valley after they beat South Dakota State 45-35. Houston Baptist laying the hammer down on Southeast Louisiana 45-3. One of the biggest blowouts we've seen all week. A classic in Stanford as the Cardinal beat the Ducks 35-34 to maintain the Pac-10, to retake the Pac-10 lead. Last time we saw Stanford on top of the Pac-10, that was before their loss to Hawaii. But last time in conference play, that was right before they won a national championship, so keep an eye on the Cardinal, even in spite of their loss. Number 24, Ohio State, heading to Madtown and losing to a Wisconsin team who hadn't had a conference win yet. Unbelievable result, 45-35 the final. That's Ohio State's first conference loss this year and ends a 5-game winning streak for them. North Dakota State beating their beating a team that's been their kryptonite for like 6 years at this point in the South Dakota Coyotes, 41-24, the final there. Meanwhile, Southern Illinois having a close call, but they weren't enough to beat the current leader and most likely winner of their division, the Northern Iowa Golden Panthers, take the win 35-27. Memphis 48-23 at home at Liberty Bowl Stadium. They take down Arkansas, an Arkansas team that just keeps getting worse with each coming week. Let's head over to Boise, San Diego State. Honestly, putting 13 points up and limiting Boise to 40 is a commendable effort. But it was not even close here. Boise State continuing their reign of dominance in the Mountain West. Utah 42-10, an even bigger blowout for them. They take down Utah State to try and keep pace with Wyoming in the Mountain West Mountain Division. But the big game in this column has to be Notre Dame, Indiana, number 13 Irish. They take down the number 17 Hoosiers 30-10 the final here. Some other games I'll mention down here. Princeton, good effort, not enough to beat Harvard though. 21-14 the final there, and 47-17 the Ole Miss Rebels completely embarrass the Auburn Tigers. Danny, any big games in this row?
Yeah, for me, the biggest game here was the comeback win between Oregon and Stanford. Like, during the stream, I thought this was going to be Oregon's runaway game, but then Stanford, they came back and they punched Oregon right in the mouth.
And PigBear?
I guess that embarrassment of the road for the Auburn Tigers Ole Miss.
Very embarrassing. We have only a couple more games to look at here from the late night slots. It's a game played surprisingly late, delayed due to weather. Duke playing NC Central, they take the win 59-13. A close game in Fresno at Bulldog Stadium, but the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors continue their near flawless record. They're only one loss on the year, 23-20 the final, as the Rainbow Warriors try to catch up to Nevada in their divisions. Speaking of which, the number 22 ranked Wolfpack beat a surprisingly good San Jose State team who beat Texas at the beginning of the year, 30-18 the final there. Idaho winning on a walk-off touchdown against UTSA. Great game to recover from their loss to New Mexico State the week prior. Will it be enough to keep pace with Los Aggies moving forward, though? Long Beach continuing to prove doubters wrong. They win 29-24 over Pacific. And a 3-overtime classic at LA Memorial Coliseum. Oregon State giving the number 15 Trojans a run for their money, even though at the end the Trojans pull away and get the win. Oh, one more game I want to mention here. Montana, new to the FBS this year, are in even worse shape than we thought them to be. They lost to an FCS team, but not just any FCS team, their rival, Montana State. What a fall from grace. Danny, or PigBear, what are your thoughts here?
Again, it's embarrassing to FCS.
Yeah, I would know. Danny?
Yeah, that for me, the game here to really watch was definitely USC Oregon State. I mean, a 3-overtime classic, especially when we were expecting USC to just steamroll Oregon State, but very impressive by the Beavers showing.
And that will wrap up our games for this week. Let's head over to the race to the conference championship. William & Mary, the big story in that regard. Let's take a look at each conference right now. A lot of shakeups moving forward. We'll start in the ACC. Florida State still technically in second, though I think you'd have to give the edge in terms of who makes it to the conference championship to North Carolina. I think the Hokies collide with the Tar Heels to end the year. Danny?
Yeah, and I definitely do think it's going to be Virginia Tech, North Carolina now. North Carolina now, it's a very favorable schedule, and Virginia Tech, they're just dominating.
And PigBear?
Yeah, I think it's Tar Heels and Hokies.
Let's head over to the Big East. UConn still unbeaten as of this point, 7-0 on their record. Right below them, though, are Syracuse and UMass, also unbeaten in conference play. Hey, I think that will eventually come down to USC or UConn, UMass. Pardon me, another school with a U at the front of it. But I think that UMass gets an upset win and vaults their way into the conference championship game for the North. Danny?
Yeah, for me, in the North, it's definitely going to be UConn, and I think they'll have a game against Temple in Jersey coming up soon.
And PigBear?
Again, in UConn, and I think that UConn Temple game would be interesting.
I didn't get the chance to mention it, but Temple currently on top of the Big East South. I think I have the Owls taking this division, though Villanova can take advantage if Temple slips up. Let's move on to the Big Ten. Currently on top of the Legends are Notre Dame and Minnesota. Michigan is sitting in third after their loss to Illinois. I think right now the best team in this division has got to be Notre Dame. They've just performed very well under pressure. Beating such teams as Michigan and Indiana will do that to your resume. Their one loss on the year was to Stanford, but I don't think that'll deter them. I think that their toughest games may be behind them, and they might be able to finish with a perfect record in conference, at least up until the conference title game, because I think the leaders division's new leader is now far and ahead the front runner for the Big Ten, and that's Illinois. Ohio State had a case to make, but then they lost on the road to Wisconsin. I think the Illini are able to control their own destiny here, though watch out. Illinois and Ohio State play each other next week, so we'll have to see how that goes. PigBear, what are your thoughts on the Big Ten? Who do you think's going to head to Indy?
The Illinois-Ohio State game will prove a lot.
Who do you have going to the Big Ten championship?
Illinois.
And the Legends?
Give me the Illinois Michigan.
Ooh. Interesting. Danny?
For me, I believe it's going to be a battle between, I think it might be Notre Dame against Illinois.
Let's head to the Big 12. A very hectic Big 12 North. Or still currently on top is Colorado, unbeaten. Kansas State is second. Also, I would say still in the hunt are Kansas and Nebraska, who are just lurking outside. Missouri, with like a miracle, could probably still have a chance there. I think that right now the best team in the division, I want to say Kansas. Kansas has just played extremely well. Much like Notre Dame, they've done great under pressure, which could be enough to lift them ahead of a Colorado or a Kansas State. As for the Big 12 South, that was decided back a couple weeks ago. I think Oklahoma State, by far, is your winner there. Danny?
Yeah, and the Big 12 is going to be Oklahoma State as the South, and for the North, I think I'm going to go a little bit crazy, but I do think that Kansas State has a case.
And PigBear?
Again, it's crazy seeing the Kansas
And then the South?
I don't know if it's possible in my mind.
Is it? Anyway, we'll move on to the Conference USA. By a country mile, UCF is ahead of USF. UCF, the only team in the conference that's 4-0 only team in the division that's 4-0 in conference play. USF is behind at 2-2. East Carolina has slipped out of contention, I would believe. I think I have the Knights winning pretty easily in the East. As for the West, Southern Miss Memphis currently dueling 5-0, 3-0. Houston a little bit behind, but I think that Houston could play a thorn in one of these teams' sides. I think that Memphis is still the best team in this conference. I think I have Memphis UCF playing in the conference title game. Danny, who do you have?
For me, in the West, I'm going to say I could see Memphis winning it out. They play Southern Miss at home later this year. It's going to be a big game, a big atmosphere, and they are a little bit more battle-tested. And for the East, it's going to be, for this week, the UCF Citronauts.
The Knots. They got a win. Oh, I believe they had a win over Dave's show. No, they didn't play. They play Dave's show next week. That'll be its.
Play Dave's show this week
Yeah.
for their annual space game.
That'll be interesting to see. I'm sure Dave Shaw will bring out his 49ers inspired alternate jerseys for that one. Speaking on it, we'll check the independents. Currently, Army is 4-3. Dave Show is sitting at 3-2. Holy Cross and Navy are 2-5. As for the Ivy League, we'll take a quick glance at. It's now Brown on top. They're 2-0 in conference play. Columbia is second at 1-1. They're both 5-2 overall. Dartmouth and Harvard are lingering behind them. I think in the Ivy League, I'm picking Columbia to round out and finish on top of that conference. Danny?
For me, it's going to be Columbia and Harvard who are going to be the ones to watch out for.
Mm-hmm. And Pigbear?
Going crazy after the Bears win out, we win Brown.
The Brown Bears. We'll move on to the MAC East, the Mid-American Conference. The Mid-American Chaos, as I would like to call it. Miami, Ohio was 6-0 up to this point, and they ended up losing to Kent State on the road on their homecoming game. And now they're tied for first with Ohio, a 4-3 team. I believe these two play each other sometime soon. I'm picking the... call me crazy, actually. I'm going to be a bit bold and pick the Bobcats to win the MAC East. I like what I've seen from this team in MAC play, and I think that Miami, Ohio has a lot of weaknesses that Ohio could easily exploit. Moving on to the MAC West, though, it's a battle between two teams unbeaten in conference. Northern Illinois, 7-0, is Goliath. I think Central Michigan, 6-1, will be David. If you know how that story goes, I think it plays out here, and I'm picking Central Michigan to win the MAC West as well as the MAC overall. Danny?
And for me, in the East, it's going to be either between Ohio and Marshall. That's what I'm going to think. Miami of Ohio, they play an extremely tough game this week, and they play against Marshall at home against Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
For the West, it's got to be currently undefeated Northern Illinois.
Currently undefeated, top 5 Northern Illinois. Pigbear?
Well, I guess the song goes, it's swag like Ohio. But I actually got something for Thunder again. Tate in the East, and they'll be fun to...
I think you got cut off at the end there. Mm-hmm. We'll head over to our next conference. The Missouri Valley, I think, was won. The East was won at least last week as Northern Iowa beat Southern Illinois to take a firm lead at 5-2, 2-1, tied with overall record with Indiana State. But I think that game is a no contest for me. Northern Iowa wins the division easily, and now Wichita State is 6-1, 4-0 in conference. They take the lead. North Dakota State is 4-4. They're 3-1. I also would watch out for South Dakota State and South Dakota still lingering a little behind. And they could be potential dark horses. But I'm going to pick the Panthers, as I mentioned before, and the Shockers playing each other in the conference championship game. Danny?
Yeah, for me, this game is going to be Northern Iowa against Wichita State. Frisco State is extremely impressed right now. They're on fire in Northern Iowa. They have a lot to improve on with this division, but they could definitely win it out.
And PigBear?
Again, I guess you got the Shockers keep on rolling. Fine, but I think we're bad.
We'll head over to the Mountain West Mountain Division. And right now, BYU on top. After a rough start to the season, they've surged ahead, currently 3-0 in conference. I believe they won 3 straight. As for Wyoming, they're sitting second at 2-1. Utah is right behind both of them. I like the Cowboys winning the Mountain Division when it's all said and done. As for the Mountain West, it's still a Boise State TCU race. I think that game's going to be a pick-em, and I'm picking the Broncos to go undefeated in conference, beat the Cowboys in Denver, and win, or at least play in the national championship game. Danny?
Yeah, for me here is going to be definitely, I'm going to say it's going to be a match between BYU and, I'm going to go crazy and say TCU. They are looking extremely good.
PigBear?
I agree with my counterpart.
Let's head over to the Pac-10. After a big revelation in the Pac-10 with the win for Stanford, they sit on top of the Pac-10 at 5-1, 3-0 in conference, the only unbeaten in conference. Meanwhile, 3 one-loss teams are right behind them. Oregon, or I guess Oregon. Oregon is 6-2. Their 2 losses are to Boise State and Stanford. They probably have the best resume on here. USC, their 1 loss, I saw you edit that. Their 1 loss was to Oregon, which is why they're currently seated behind them. They had a bit of a tough time against Oregon State. But I do like the Trojans, actually, to slip into the conference championship game when it's all said and done. As for Arizona State, they also play a role here. They're going to be a very interesting spoiler team, perhaps, in the Pac-10. Danny, who are your top 2?
My top 2 here is going to be Stanford and USC. These 2 teams have played very well, and I could see Oregon maybe dropping another game, potentially against Arizona State, maybe.
And PigBear? Interesting. We all have different games here. Let's head to the SEC. The SEC East is currently led by Georgia Tech. Georgia at 6-1. They're technically tied, but Georgia Tech has the edge with the perfect record. Florida, not that close there, but they can play spoiler to Georgia when those 2 play in Jacksonville this week. Meanwhile, the SEC West has basically been locked up. LSU currently 7-0. They beat Bama, the one team who is going to challenge for that. Bama now needs SEC West leader LSU to lose out, most likely. And the schedule for the Tide doesn't get easier. Give me the top 2 teams in the SEC, Georgia Tech, LSU, facing off against each other. Danny?
And for me, it's going to be, later on, it's going to be a rematch between Georgia Tech and LSU. They play each other this year, and that's going to be a little preview for the conference championship game.
Wow, that'll be great. PigBear? Interesting.
The game is going to be in Atlanta.
Yeah. That's very interesting to see. Georgia Tech's last national championship was back in 2017. They beat the Buckeyes in the Natty. As for the SoCon, we'll head down to William & Mary is a 5-0 team in conference. They started 0-3 and they haven't lost a game since. They've racked up 5 in a row in conference, and now James Madison is in second. App State falling to a tie with the Dukes, who are at 3 and 5. William and Mary, very, very great story to see. I think the Tribe take the win in the division. As for the South, this is a Georgia Southern division to win. Though Western Carolina is 3 and 1, they could play spoiler down the stretch. But give me the Eagles all day, and I think that Georgia Southern ends William & Mary's Cinderella run in Nashville. Danny?
Yeah, it's going to be Georgia Southern is going to win the South for sure. And in the North, it has to be William & Mary. They're 5-0, and every other team behind them has at least 2 losses. Give me the Tribe to win the North.
Let's head to the Southland East. Actually, Pigbear, you're the SoCon guy. Sorry. They play each other at the end of the year, don't they?
Oh, yeah. The winner of that one, because I project flash the wall pretty easily. No reference or anything to what happened to Jonathan Wesley. What happened yesterday? No.
Let's head to the South. Let's head on a lighter note to the Southland. Currently on top of the Southland East is McNeese State. Lamar is technically tied, though McNeese has tiebreakers with a 5-2 regular season record or overall record. Give me the Cowboys to win that division, and as they're probably the best all-around team there. As for the West, Stephen F. Austin is now 8-0. That's the best record in all of college football. By technicality, but you still gotta respect it. Sam Houston State is not too far behind. They're 6-1. Their one loss was to an underdog UT Arlington squad. Give me the Lumberjacks to take the West and play the Cowboys in the Southland title game in Frisco. Danny?
And that, for me in the West, it has to be Stephen F. Austin, but they do have a good neutral site game against Sam Houston State later on in the calendar season. And for the East, it may be a tough one, but I think maybe McNeese State might edge out Lamar just like.
And Pig Bear?
Southland. Yeah, I think Cowboys will pull it. Give me the Lumberjacks.
Let's head to the Sun Belt. A fun belt Sun Belt, definitely. Troy slipping into second in the West after their win over Western Kentucky, which dropped the Hilltoppers in the rankings. Now Georgia State is second. Coastal Carolina is first. These teams are brand new to the Sun Belt, and they've immediately made themselves acclimated. Give me the Chanticleers. They've impressed me a lot. Give me them in the East. And in the West, North Texas has pretty much locked it in right now. Let me get a battle of teal and green between the Chants and the Mean Green. Danny?
Yeah, for me, in the East, I think it's got to be Coastal Carolina. They are looking extremely dominant. And even though, and they do host Georgia State later on this year, so that's going to be a very big game. In the West, give me the Mean Green. Just give me the teal against the Mean Green.
Pig Bear?
Sean clear for their first year in the league. Roll on and win it. And, yeah, give it to Sean clear.
Let's head over to the WAC. This is WACtion. A lot of great winning records in the WAC. Nevada 7-0, still unbeaten, with a big win on their resume over New Mexico State. I could see them jumping the Aggies in the rankings at some point down the stretch. Meanwhile in the mountain, 6-1 and 6-2 New Mexico State and Idaho are wrangling for the top 2 spots. Also, don't ignore Hawaii, who is in 3rd. They have 1 loss to the Long Beach 49ers, who are 3-1 in conference and sitting 2nd in the WAC Pacific. Call me crazy, but Long Beach has a really good case for the WAC down the stretch. Though I snap back to reality, and I think Nevada is the best team in this conference. They take the Pacific, and New Mexico State takes the Mountain, and we get a good rematch between those two. Danny?
Yeah, for me, it's going to be a rematch between Nevada and New Mexico State, but don't be surprised if Hawaii gets back into this race.
PigBear?
Now I'll look at the Warriors.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Let's move on to the teams that are bowl bound. The teams highlighted have clinched bowls this week. Arizona State, Colorado, FAU, Idaho, UMass, North Texas, Notre Dame, Syracuse, and Wichita State all add their names onto the board. I do want to make an amendment to to what I said before. There are other 8-0 teams. Stephen F. Austin is joined by Southern Miss, Oklahoma State, and Boise State in that regard. Let's head over now to the the knocking outside. These are some teams that have a chance coming up to join this club. Moving down the list, Alabama and Auburn are off this week. Both the Iron Bowl teams have chances to clinch bowls. In spite of lackluster seasons the year prior, they've really impressed, at least in part, down the stretch this year. The first big name is App State. Of course, they lost this week, but they can clinch it against the Citadel at home. Eastern Michigan having a surprisingly good season this year. They played Western in a rivalry game to decide if the Eagles can clinch a bowl game. Florida State can clinch it with a win on the road against Virginia. Georgia State plays FAU, who's already clinched the bowl game, but Georgia State is knocking on the door. Indiana can get one against Penn State, in spite of some tough losses. Kansas, I repeat, Kansas can clinch in Week 9 if they win on the road, though the caveat being that's against Colorado. Kansas State can also clinch on the road against Texas. Long Beach State can clinch their first bowl bid in nearly 17 years if they beat the Nevada Wolfpack this week. Tall order. UMass plays Syracuse this week in order to attempt to clinch their first bowl bid ever in the FBS, or at least since joining the Big East. Let's head over to Minnesota, who plays for the Jug this week against Michigan. If they get a big upset win on the road, they clinch bowl eligibility. McNeese can clinch bowl eligibility and the division lead if they beat their rival Nichols this week. Nebraska can clinch it over Texas A&M. Northern Iowa can do the same against North Dakota. Northwestern plays Purdue to try and nab a bowl berth. Oklahoma can clinch with a win over Texas Tech. They had a bowl bid last year, though they ended up losing. Though they would end up losing. Actually, no, they didn't. They didn't make a bowl last year. Pardon me. Rutgers can clinch with a win on the road against the Temple Owls. SMU, if they can beat rival Rice, clinch a bowl berth. Tennessee can clinch it over Tulane. Temple is also looking for a bowl bid if they can beat Rutgers. The winner of that gets the berth. Northwestern State hopes to spoil UTA's party, and they can also ruin the division lead for the Aggies. The UTA team is trying to slip into a bowl. Texas State can clinch if they beat New Mexico State at home. Villanova is off this week. William & Mary can not only clinch this game, but potentially a SoCon championship spot by getting another win, though this is non-conference against Liberty. And Wyoming is potentially locked in as they play a crummy Eastern Washington team. Who is the big teams here for you guys, Danny?
Yeah, I think the teams who could easily get into bowl berth is William and Mary against Wyoming. William and Mary, Wyoming. Those two have very easy competition. But for the big matches between these knocking outside teams, would have to be Temple against Rutgers. They're both looking for it, and this will be a big matchup.
Who I didn't mention, actually, I missed them, but Ohio State can clinch if they beat Illinois. PigBear?
Again, the Appalachian thing. Here's been I mean, in a lot of reasons, I take the Tigers overall, but now I'm
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M could be interesting. NC Tulane could be interesting. And Temple Rutgers. Sign up for that.
Mm-hmm. Now let's head to a news flash in the Big Ten. A new licensing agreement for media rights. In real life, this switch will happen in 2024. This will happen next year for the Big Ten. Danny, you want to take us through this?
Yeah, that the Big Ten has now agreed for NBC to have some rights to host some Big Ten games. Just like how the Irish currently have an exclusive NBC deal, now NBC's looking to open up to the rest of the Big Ten. And they have this also brand new model that they're going to bring up for this, where basically all the new games will be big new kickoff hosted by Fox, so they get that guarantee. Afternoon games at around 3:30 will be ESPN and BBC. That's what they're named.
Mm-hmm.
The primetime game will be ABC and NBC. Big Ten Network occasionally popping out here and there, depending on the value.
Interesting. We'll keep you in touch on that. We do plan to have the networks add something to 2KU. We'll keep you in touch on that. Let's head over to our top 25 now. Not a lot of change up top. We'll show them off. The top 5 remains unchanged. The Cowboys, Broncos, Hokies, Tigers, and Huskies have been sitting comfortably as all the chaos happens below them. And Oklahoma State, Boise State, can anyone slip their way into those top 2 spots outside of them, Danny?
Yeah, for me, I definitely do think a team to maybe watch out for, like a number 2 is Virginia Tech. They're dominating against everyone. They have a very favorable schedule, and Boise State, they got a couple of tough things coming up.
How about you, PigBear? What are your thoughts on can anyone burst the bubble of the top 2 here?
It's got to be the Hokies. If my prediction is wrong, LSU wins, I think Tigers burst that bubble and get in.
The SEC is definitely a wild card. Here, let's move on to the rest of the top 10 with a couple teams who want to make their case for a national championship berth. Starting with number 6 here, Stanford. Big win over Oregon. Reminding everyone that they're still relevant, damn it. Meanwhile, Illinois at 7, another team who surprised a lot of people going in, but it shouldn't be that surprising. Illinois has one of the most dominant defenses in the Big Ten, if not all of college football, able to hold teams to low scores. Whereas they completely shut down Michigan in their game against each other. Let's move on to Georgia Tech at 8. A great dominant team. Perhaps the best team in the SEC. At 9, we have TCU. Moving all the way up to number 9. TCU reaching new heights there, eyeing the Broncos jealously. They want to be where they are. And number 10 is Baylor. You forget after their loss to Oklahoma State, but Baylor is a great team. A well-built, all-around team. I could see them definitely playing in a BCS Bowl when all's said and done. Who's your big names to look out for in this top 10, Danny?
For me, the team that could both make or break their entire schedule is TCU. TCU has a tough slate of games, especially versus Miami, where, as I repeat, their last 4 games includes at Utah, home against San Diego State, home against Boise, and at Baylor.
Yeah, they play the Broncos.
So if they're able to win all those, they'll have a case to be in the top 5.
I think if they beat Boise, they lock themselves into the national championship game in Boise's spot. I think I think that's a case for a new toughest schedule here. Boise and Baylor back to back is unforgiving. PaipeiJoey101, any thoughts on the top 10?
Great for the whole Texas Christian thing, but I like the Illini ever since they got stuff on the one-yard rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, back to my grammar right. This team is my dog horse national team. It's my spoiler, my dog horse national team. It's going to be Virginia Tech versus Georgia Tech.
Mm.
Yeah,
You think someone's going to beat Oklahoma State? Who does Oklahoma State have on the stretch? We'll get back to that in a second if you can pull it up. But as you pull it up, let's take a look at our next 5. Number 11 is Notre Dame. Big win over a top team in Indiana to slot up to number 11. UConn is now 12. Unbeaten team. Basically taking Rutgers' spot as the perennial best team in the Big East. Though unlike Rutgers last year, there are a lot of teams bubbling under them. Syracuse and UMass and even Temple could potentially be Big East spoilers. USC is number 13. The Trojans are a bit under the radar, but have made their case for the Pac-10. And going down these last few games, North Carolina is sitting at 14. They were a bit down in the dumps after their loss to Florida State, but they managed to pick themselves back up with a good win against Clemson to bump into the top 15 once again. And number 15, we have the Oregon Ducks slip to Stanford. Don't let the ranking fool you. Oregon is still a national championship contender to me. They can easily win out the rest of their schedule. I think they may slip up against a team like Arizona State, but definitely watch out for the Ducks. Danny, did you get Oklahoma State's games down the stretch?
Yes, they did. This week they may be on a bye, but then they play at home against Nebraska, at Missouri, home against Texas A&M, and at Oklahoma.
Interesting. That's not a super tough schedule, or not the toughest schedule. It's no TCU, but it could definitely lead to some problems. Danny, who are you interested in in this top 15 now?
In this top 15, it's either going to be Notre Dame or UConn. Notre Dame has a really good case of winning Big Ten, and UConn, they're the big surprise team in the Big East.
PaipeiJoey101?
Or even target that but I don't contender, but they could probably try all as well.
Let's head to our next 5, 16 through 20. Michigan falling from 6 to 16, dropping 10 spots after their second loss of the year. They lost to Notre Dame earlier and Illinois this week. Michigan still a good team. Definitely want to watch out for them. Indiana, 17. Despite their loss, they don't move on the rankings. The Hoosiers are still a very well-rounded team. Maybe ranked a bit too high, but Indiana would definitely prove me wrong if I said that. Then we have our 3 horsemen of the apocalypse, you could say. Southern Miss, Memphis, and New Mexico State. These 3 have just kind of been swapping spots with each other for the last few weeks. Southern Miss and Memphis, it's really a coin flip between those 2 on who's the best team in the Conference USA. I think Memphis is better. Danny thinks Southern Miss is better, I know. Oh, New Mexico State, we both rank second in between the 2, but they ended up averaging lower. So they stay put at 20. Who are your big teams in these 5, Danny?
Yeah, my big team would probably be either Southern Miss or Memphis. Southern Miss, they have been very dominant. They're still undefeated, and they play against an FCS team like Southern this week, so pretty easy game for them.
Oh, don't underestimate Southern. Actually, hang on. You keep going.
Memphis plays at Houston, which could be a little bit of a trick. Houston does have a history of beating them. And for New Mexico State, they could win out. They do play against Texas State this week, which is going to be a tough game for them. But Give me the Aggies of these three.
You never want to underestimate a team like Southern. We showcased them earlier. They are one of the best teams in the HBCUs. Definitely keep an eye out for Southern. We'll have to inform you on the SCS playoffs when those come around. PigBear, what are your thoughts on these 5? We'll move on to our next 5, the last 5 here. Sitting at number 21 will be Syracuse. The Orange could potentially throw a wrench in UConn's BCS dreams. Meanwhile, at number 22, it's Nevada, just waiting for the right opportunity to springboard ahead of New Mexico State in that conference race. 23 is Stephen F. Austin. Now, most of you might not be familiar, but you may have seen a couple glances if you've been following the series. CNF Austin, out of the Southland, is 8-0 this season. They've been bubbling under for weeks, and now they finally get their chance to thrive here in the top 25. I have big time for them. Conferences like the Southland, the SoCon, they barely ever get ranks. So anytime they show up, it's a big deal. You'll definitely cherish this moment for Stephen F. Austin. Number 24 is Georgia. Another team that bubble under the radar, but there's only so under the radar you can be when you're Georgia. 6-1 on the year. They finally get ranked after a couple snubs. They're one of those teams that have a great record, but you never really notice it. And 25 Tennessee, they stay about the same after a close win to the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Who are your big names here in the top 5? I definitely think y'all mention one team out of here. Danny?
Stephen of Austin. They are statistically one of the best teams they are. They're number 1 in the Southland for offense, scoring an average of 38.8 points per game. And they've only allowed their opponents to score 15 points per game. That is impressive. And point differential, they're at 190. They're at one of the best statistics there are in the country. So give me Stephen of Austin to start rising to the ranks.
The other best point differentials are up way higher in the rankings, so definitely see that. Also, I was right on which one you'd mentioned. PigBear, what are your big names here? Tennessee. Let's take a look at the other teams considered for the rankings. Arizona State, right outside. Ohio State dropped out after the loss to Wisconsin. They're now 5-3. Also, watch out for teams like Coastal Carolina and Colorado. UMass is at 6-1. Central Michigan also at 6-1. Down there in the MAC, Kansas and Temple are 5-2. Kansas State is 5-2 as well. That Big 12 North is hectic. I wouldn't be surprised to see some more teams ranked in there, even though there haven't been a lot this year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the only team in the Big 12 North to be ranked this year was Missouri at the start of the year, but they dropped out pretty early.
I believe you're correct. I believe Missouri was ranked at some point this year, and I know all these teams have at least had like little glimpses in and out because how has Memphis and Wisconsin beaten each other?
I would definitely expect to see a Colorado or a Kansas pop in at some point soon. Let's move on to the players of the week. Some great performances. Dominique Goodman back again from Kansas. 4 touchdowns he threw. He was 11 for 17, 220 yards in the game against Oklahoma. Ian Miller had a field day against Texas for Colorado. 14 for 20, 220 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, as well as 80 rushing yards. And Matt Robinson, the running back from North Carolina, had a great game against the Clemson Tigers. 20 attempts for 238 yards and 4 TDs. But the big player of the week is not an offensive player. It's defensive player, linebacker Donald McGill out of William & Mary. When you have 3 sacks and 3 interceptions in a game, you're going to get noticed no matter what school you come from here. Big game for Donald McGill, who I think certainly locked himself in to a spot, not just in Players of the Week, but potentially in the all SoCon team at the end of the year. Danny?
Yeah, for me, William and Mary's linebacker, that was so impressive. You know, it's not every day to see a linebacker get 3 interceptions, but 3 sacks as well.
Mm-hmm.
Impressive.
Big Bear?
Just hats off to Drive. Get back in full good coach. Give him some awards, some William.
Mm-hmm. Let's head out to our games to watch. A couple big games this week. What would have been a ranked matchup, but Ohio State ended up dropping out. Number 7, Illinois, heading to Columbus to take on the Buckeyes. Going to the Shoe is never easy. Trust me, I know. As a Michigan fan, it's never easy to head to the Shoe. Syracuse will play UMass on the road as well. Not as prestigious, but UMass is definitely a tough team. The West Virginia Mountaineers will attest that this team plays great at home. Houston and Memphis, that's one I think some people might be sleeping on. The Memphis Tigers, yeah, sure, they've been rolling through their year, but Houston almost beat the number 2 team in the country. They're off by a point from tying that game. So keep an eye out for that one. Northern Illinois taking on Miami, Ohio. That's another game that would have been against two undefeated teams playing against each other, though Miami ended up dropping their last game. Northern Illinois heavily favored in this one, but watch out. Miami loves to be a spoiler. We'll head down the list. USC taking on Arizona State, a battle for contention in the Pac-10. Tulane heading on the road to take on number 25, Tennessee. Another team trying to play spoiler there. How about Rutgers and Temple as well? The Owls and the Scarlet Knights playing for a spot in the Big East title game. Danny, what are your big games this week?
The big game I will really watch out for is the Battle of Orlando. Truckers against the Citronauts.
Yeah. Pig Bear? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the game we're going to is not any of that. When you get the world's largest cocktail party, you gotta go to it. 2KU Saturdays is heading out October 30th for the first time ever. This will be a night game. Florida, Georgia. The 24th ranked Bulldogs will take on the Gators in another rivalry matchup we're gonna highlight here. We had Oklahoma, Texas as well. You gotta head out to these games when you get the chance. It's just something you don't want to miss. Anything can happen. And who do you guys have in this game? I'm picking the Bulldogs. I think that Georgia is a very well-rounded team and could potentially give a team like Georgia Tech a bit of trouble. Danny?
Give me I'm agree with you. The Georgia Bulldogs. They look really good, and I think this will be a very close matchup. But give me Georgia.
Big Bear, you want to say not so fast or anything?
Okay. We're gonna get my fourth or less speech, but it's gonna be about music.
Okay.
While not from Tom Petty from Gainesville, Georgia. Florida, not Georgia.
Uh-huh.
He used to be a Georgia but things like that. This rivalry for Georgia. Terrible for now split for Georgia. They're full with all that
That's great. I didn't even know REM was from America. I thought they were British, but interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Also, keep an eye out. I don't have a slide for this one, but keep an eye out on the channel on Halloween. Some spooky things will be happening down in I believe Baton Rouge. Can you fact check that one? As Ole Miss heading over to LSU to take on the number 4th ranked Tigers. I expect it to be a bit of a romp for the Tigers, but hey, scary things can happen on October 31st. Who do you guys have in that game?
Give me LSU to win at home against their rival Ole Miss.
And PigBear?
Not so fast.
Whoa. Interesting. That's an interesting pick. And on that, happy Halloween. Yeah, interesting. We'll keep you guys updated on that. Thank you all for watching this game, or watching this episode of 2KU Weekly. I'm just not there today, man. We'll see you guys next time on. We'll see you guys hopefully on Sunday this time instead of on a Tuesday. But thanks for tuning in nonetheless. Any last thoughts for you guys?
Stay safe out there.
And PigBear?
Hopefully listen to the colleges next week.
Yeah, we'll see you guys around. Thank you for watching.